All right, awkward silence. How you doing? Let's all stand and worship together. Your gaze be lifted up. Tell everyone how great the love come down from heaven's gate to kiss the earth with hope and grace. Who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty. Who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty. Lift up your hands, be lifted up. Let the redeemed declare the love. We bow down at heaven's gate to kiss the feet of hope and grace. Who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty. Who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty. There is one God, He is holy. There is one Lord over everything. There is one King, He is Jesus, King of glory, strong and mighty. There is one God, He is holy. There is one Lord over everything. There is one King, He is Jesus, King of glory, strong and mighty. You are the King of glory, the Lord, strong and mighty. You are the King of glory, the Lord, strong and mighty. You are the King of glory, the Lord, strong and mighty. You are the King of glory, the Lord, strong and mighty. You can be seated.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Glad to see everyone here on this rainy, dreary fall day. A couple things to remind you about. If you have a student in 6th through 12th grade, Parker has extended the window to sign up for the student retreat, which is the weekend of November 4th. So if you have a student that has been wondering about going, feel free to reach out to Parker with questions. Don't wait for your student to give you information. They will not. So if you have questions, please reach out to Parker, and it is not too late to sign up. Also, a reminder that the Safe Worship program is happening right after church lunch, and they will get the training started as soon as possible. Ethan's going to talk a little bit more about that within the service. And our Thanksgiving food collection is underway. There are small slips of paper in the lobby that you can grab with a list of items that we're looking to collect for our food distribution the Monday before the week of Thanksgiving, looking to serve about 100 to 150 families. So things like box stuffing, instant mashed potatoes, cans of corn, pie filling, the full list is back there. Pick one up. You can either fill an entire bag if you'd like to do it that way, or you can just bring one or many of a singular item. So if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to me anytime, and I can give you some more direction if that is helpful to you. For now, let's stand and continue to worship.
strange and lovely sound. I hear it in the thunder and the rain. It's ringing in the skies like cannons in the night. The music of the universe playing, singing, you are holy, great and mighty. The moon and the stars declare who you are. I'm so unworthy, but still you love me. Forever my heart will sing of how great you are. Beautiful and free, the song of galaxies, reaching far beyond the Milky Way. Let's join in with the sound. Come on, let's sing it out as the music of the universe plays. We're singing, you are holy, great and mighty. The moon and the stars declare who you are. I'm so unworthy, but still you love me. Forever my heart will sing of you. All glory, honor, power is yours, amen. Glory, honor, power is yours, amen. Glory, honor, power is yours, forever, amen. Great and mighty, the moon and the stars declare who you are. I'm so unworthy, but still you love me. Forever my heart will sing of you. You are holy, great and mighty. The moon and the stars declare who you are. I'm so unworthy, but still you love me. Forever my heart will sing of how great you are. You hear me when I call. You are my morning song. Though darkness fills the night, it cannot hide the light. Whom shall I fear? You crush the enemy underneath my feet. On my sword and shield, those troubles linger still. Whom shall I fear? I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns for I know who stands behind the God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. I know who goes before me, I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The God of angel armies is always by my side. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, God, we just thank you for this time of worship and for this new day. We just praise you, God, with these words. We just pray that it would be a pleasing sacrifice to you, God. You are holy. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You can be seated.
Well, just by way of information this morning, if you see any men in our midst that are moving a little slow, or even any men that never managed to make their way here to join us this morning, have some grace. We just got back from a men's retreat last night out at Elkhorn Valley in rural Ohio. Had a great time, but there's not a lot of sleep that is to be had on an occasion like that, as you might imagine. You finally have an opportunity to just kind of unwind. You stay up late, you get up early, and you're in a room in a bunks with a bunch of other guys that are making a lot of nighttime noises. I heard somebody describe it as a pressurized wetsuit being cut apart by an electric turkey knife. So you get all sorts of stuff like that going on, so just have some grace. Getting older is a strange thing. As a guy, when you're in your 20s, right, and you go to the doctor for like a wellness visit, a regular checkup, that's if you actually even went to the doctor in your 20s. But if you did, it's practically like, why are you even here? They put the stethoscope on your chest almost because they have to do something. Because they know when you're 24, you can pretty much eat Ho-Hos and Big Macs all day long, fall down a full flight of stairs, and you're probably going to be fine. Okay, so you breathe a couple of times and make sure you don't have a fever and you're on your way. 60 seconds max, that's all it is. Your 30s, not a whole lot different. They might ask you if you smoke, how many drinks you have a week. They look in your ears, maybe small talk about the family and such, but it's still pretty much a non-event. Not even sure they close the exam room door up through this point in your life, okay? But then you hit your 40s. Comedians talk about this. You hit your 40s as a guy. The doctor arrives, and he kind of shuts the door real slow, tells you to have a seat, and somehow you know there's this vibe in the air. You know you're going to get into things now. You really are. Things are suddenly very serious. You talk in hushed tones. There's stuff he's going to have to ask about, stuff you're going to have to talk about that's suddenly just the kind of stuff that nobody wants to talk about or have to deal with. The reason I say that is this morning, I'm warning you, we're going to get into it a bit in this morning's message. Not with that stuff, not with middle-aged dude doctor stuff. Don't worry. No one needs to hear about that this morning. But we're going to get into it with some things that, if we're honest, a lot of us kind of wish we didn't have to talk about. Maybe even wish wasn't in the Bible. Aren't you so glad you came this morning? We're in the 4th week of this Simply Happy teaching series that we've been in. We're using the New Testament book of Philippians to talk about lasting happiness, about joy, because in Philippians, we read about godly joy and all that it can mean and look like in our lives, more than probably any other book in the Bible. But the thing is, as we've talked about, Philippians was written by the Apostle Paul while he was chained up in a dungeon prison awaiting a death sentence. And yet, he's writing repeatedly and convincingly about living with genuine joy, with contentment, talking about a lasting happiness that entire cultures and civilizations have exhausted themselves trying to find. So together in this series, we're learning to become students of joy together. And that sounds like a nice smile-filled theme, right? No rainy day messages here. Well, see, what we're discovering week after week is that living lives that grow in the kind of joy Jesus wants for us, just like when Jesus is talking in John chapter 15 about us remaining connected to him, connected to the Father, connected in his love and character in a relationship with him. And then he says in verse 11 of that chapter, I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. See, what we're discovering as we do that, what we're discovering about that joy Jesus wants for us, is it's so often counterintuitive to the circumstantial happiness that we've been culturally conditioned to chase after and to feel good about. And the message that we're slowly getting about joy is basically this. You can have this joy that Paul has found. You can. A genuine, deep joy that isn't tossed around by the waves of emotion and circumstance. A joy that can be an anchor for your soul. The same joy that was in Christ himself. The joy that allowed him to, as we read in Hebrews 12, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame. It is true that we can have that kind of deep and transformative joy. But it's going to mean some relearning, some recalibrating from the ways that so many of us have been conditioned to finding and feeling happiness. That's what we're discovering over these weeks. And today's going to be no different. In fact, as I suggested, today we're going to get into it. We spent all of last week on basically the first half of chapter 2. We talked in depth about how we can grow in humility. And we realized that that's about being cooperative in the work God wants to do in us, like the fresh Play-Doh out of the can illustration. Soft and moldable for God to do the work he needs to do. He does the heavy lifting, so to speak. We just stay soft. We stay moldable. We stay committed over the long haul. We got through verse 13 of chapter 2 last week. That was that verse. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for God works in you. That's the heavy lifting that he does, according to his good purpose. That's where we stopped, verse 13. Now, before we jump in with the next verse in our chapter, I want to set it up by having you think about something, kind of a little mental exercise here. You may remember in week 1 of this series, we talked about gratitude, right? And I've been trying to practice that, like we said that first week. And I hope some of you are too, practicing gratitude. I take some deliberate times during my week to really identify and name specific and unique things that I'm genuinely grateful for. This isn't a forced thing. This is genuine stuff. It's not fake. But it does take some deliberate thinking. And you know what I'm discovering? Maybe you're discovering this too. What I'm discovering as I do that is it does something. It really does. Now, I'm not claiming to you that in these past few weeks I've made so much progress in my journey of joy that I'm practically Jesus. Trust me, nowhere close. But it's just that I've been able to see, even if it's in little ways, practicing genuine gratitude does something. It kind of sets a tone. It sets the temperature of a moment or of a conversation, or you could even say of a day. It does something. But let me tell you what else does something. This is what I want you to do a mental exercise about. The reverse, okay? Have you ever spent any amount of time listening to complaining and grumbling? Listening to people continually expressing things they're annoyed or upset about. Things they're dissatisfied with, things they don't like or they can't stand. Here's what's wrong with my husband, here's what's wrong with my in-laws, here's what's wrong with my kids, or my sister's kids, or the neighbor's kids, or kids today in general. Here's what's wrong with my car, my house, my homeowners association, here's what's wrong with the school board and the township. If everybody would just check with me and do things my way, everything would be great. And here's all the things that aren't great, and I'm going to make sure you hear about it. I want you to think about an environment like that, being in an environment, listening to that in 2 ways. First, and this is not a raise your hands thing, this is just a mental exercise. First of all, how many of you have ever been in an environment like that where you're with someone like that? Maybe even you're with multiple people like that. How did that affect you? How did you feel walking out of that space, leaving that conversation? Did you feel rejuvenated and uplifted? Did you feel encouraged and motivated to head into the rest of your day with a great attitude? Here's the other way I want you to think about that. How many of you, again, no showing of hands, how many of you have been that person? Maybe it was with a group of others. Maybe it was just with your spouse or your kids. Maybe it was just a ramped up complaining session you had in your own head. And it was a hungry monster. And boy, you fed that monster all the food it wanted, right? You held a show-stopping concert of complaining all in your own head. And when the concert was over, did you feel lighter and more joyful? In that moment, were you equipped and ready to go serve someone else's interests above your own, like we talked about last week? Did you feel renewed and strengthened by God's Spirit, like the story of Elijah in 1 Kings? Okay, now that you've thought about that, I think we're ready for our next verse in the second chapter of Philippians. It's a real short verse, verse 14. You ready? Here it is. Do everything without grumbling or arguing. I guarantee something. Right now, right when I read that, right when it came on screen, some of you rolled your eyes internally. Really? We're going to do this one? I take my precious time to come to church, and this is what I have to listen to? Now we're going to censor my free speech? Is that what this message is about, Ethan? Okay. But see, what we're talking about in this series is the habits that we must cultivate, the disciplines we'll need to develop if we want deep joy to grow in us. And there's no doubt, verse 14 is a doozy. Do everything without grumbling or arguing. Paul, he didn't mean everything, right? Not everything. That's probably a translation thing, right? Ethan, you talk about that. Tell us the real language that didn't actually mean everything. It's just a different thing. You ever met that guy? It's the same dude who insists that the bowling alley's wood floorboards being warped, and that's the reason he's not getting a good score. Or the pool cue he's using is the reason he's not sinking the balls. Or the reason he's not having a great baseball game is because the stupid batting gloves, he got factory seconds from the manufacturer. Do everything without complaining or arguing. I don't agree with that at all. What a stupid verse. Never did like that, Paul. What a pompous jerk. Who does he think he is? I'm not joking here. I once had a graduated high school senior try to start an argument in a small group time after a main session at a Christain youth conference about how the translators must have gotten it wrong because obviously Jesus wants us to dispute and argue. That was an interesting one to get into. Here, maybe this will help. The Amplified Bible is an academic translation that takes the full scope of meaning from the original language source texts. It takes the nuances of the original language and develops out the original idea into the fullest and most accurate phrase possible. It doesn't make for fluid reading because you have these sentences that end up being very chopped and having lots of phrases built within them. But it's great for really getting to the heart of what the original language in a verse or passage intended to communicate, okay? Here's how the Amplified Bible fleshes out verse 14. Do all things without grumbling and fault-finding and complaining, and without questioning and debating, both against God and among yourselves. There, is that better? Look, if I was an outsider trying to gauge how important this principle that Paul's talking about is to modern-day Christians, I might come to the conclusion that for most followers of Christ, either this page in their Bible is missing, or maybe they're just extremely forgetful, or maybe that they've just decided they don't want to do it. Not sure what else you could observe with this. Can you imagine, by the way, are you starting to see how often with this series on joy I'm saying that? Can you imagine what our church, our marriages, our families, our schools, our neighborhoods, our workplaces, how they might begin to be transformed just by followers of Christ taking this one verse as seriously as Paul did? Can you imagine? Now, complaining and arguing, the way the scriptures talk about them, They're very closely connected, as we're going to see. There's no shortage of language in the scriptures about arguing and disputes, about quarreling and divisiveness. Verses like Titus chapter 3, avoid foolish controversies and genealogies and arguments and quarrels about the law, because these are unprofitable and useless. Warn a divisive person once, and then warn them a second time. After that, have nothing to do with them. 2 Timothy chapter 2, pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Don't have anything to do with foolish and stupid arguments, because you know they produce quarrels. And of course, you know, if you're in an argument like that and you recite that verse, the person would come back at you, well, this isn't a stupid argument, that's why. This is a meaningful argument. Anyway, I think you're going to see as we go through how complaining and arguing have plenty in common. But today, we're going to specifically direct our time on grumbling, on complaining, because any psychologist or therapist will tell you complaining is the enemy of gratitude. It just is. And we already know that gratitude is an essential component of this joy that we're after. So we're going to live this morning talking about this complaining idea. Of course, though, we need an honesty check if we're going to go any further, all right? We live in a world where there are things we encounter many times a day that are unideal. From the tiniest infractions of our comfort and preference all the way up to profound suffering and hardship. And we don't want to be fake, we don't want to be syrupy weirdos or inauthentic, but we still want real joy, deep joy. And we're learning that, well, we have some learning to do, right? So how do we go about moving in the direction of eliminating complaining from our lives without being fake? Well, if we can get really pragmatic for a second, there's really only two ways you can do battle with complaining, okay? Really only two ways. The first one is to change your external and circumstantial world so thoroughly and so completely that there is actually nothing left to complain about. So if you've been complaining about not being married, you need to get married. If you're married, you have to coach and mold your spouse into becoming the kind of partner who would never generate any cause for a complaint. If you've been complaining about your job, you need to get your employer to ask you how many hours you'd like to work and when, and you tell them how much money is acceptable for you to make. You'll need to address traffic and infrastructure concerns to make sure 279 and the Parkway and McKnight Road aren't congested to the point of being complain-worthy. And maybe the hardest, you're going to have to change the driving habits of a lot of other drivers in the process if you're going to go all in on this one, right? It's the only way to do it. That's one way to stop complaining, to change your externals to where there's nothing left to complain about. The other way, of course, is to change your internals. Clearly, this is the path Paul takes. Since we already know he has way more in his life, his circumstances to complain about than I do. So we're going to spend the remainder of our time on this path, on the ways we can do battle with complaining by changing our internals, okay? In order to have that conversation, I think it's helpful to make a distinction. I want to distinguish between two words in the Bible that we tend to read about and associate with complaining. Because on the surface, we kind of think of these words maybe as the same, but they're different. The first word is in our English translations most often as the word groaning. Okay, I want you to look at a few passages. Psalm chapter 6. My soul is in deep anguish. How long, Lord? How long? I am worn out from my groaning. All night long I flood my bed with weeping and drench my couch with tears. Exodus 2. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out. And their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. Similarly, Exodus 6, I have heard the groaning of the Israelites, whom the Egyptians are enslaving, and I have remembered my covenant. Therefore, say to the Israelites, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. Throughout the scriptures, the term translated as groaning is almost always pictured as people pouring their hearts out to God about hardship or suffering. Often it's situations of oppression or injustice. We read about generations of Israelites living as slaves in Egypt, where we read it from King David as he felt trapped and overwhelmed by the antagonism of King Saul, or even by the weight of his own sin later in life, and he cries out to God. Groaning is God-centered when we see it in the Scriptures. It's pouring your heart out to God about those soul aches, those burdens too great for you to bear, where your spirit is crushed and you're deeply aware of your own frailty and weakness in the process. That's groaning. And what we see with this word groaning on how God hears those cries, he has compassion on his people in their suffering and oppression and hardship. That's groaning, and groaning is not the word Paul uses in the Philippians verse. Groaning is looked upon with kindness and compassion. It's even invited by God. The word Paul uses in Philippians 2:14 is the other G word, and that's the word grumbling. And this word is quite different from groaning. If we compare apples to apples, if we see the same Israelites, the same Old Testament characters with this word, I think you'll see the differences pretty quickly. A few verses. How long will this wicked community grumble against me? I have heard the complaints of these grumbling Israelites. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, "If only we had died in Egypt." They grumbled in their tents and did not obey the Lord. We know all about grumbling, don't we? Groaning is God-centered, but grumbling is me-centered. It's completely about me not liking what I'm getting or experiencing or seeing or smelling or tasting right now. It's self-preference, self-comfort, self-success, all of that. And when that's our focus, we are often blind to our sin and weakness. Groaning is God-centered and we're aware of it. Grumbling is me-centered and we are blinded to it. The grumbling is so much a part of so many of our lives that we do this thing. It's a thing we often do when God's word is very clear, very direct about some destructive habit or way of living that we're accustomed to. The thing we do is we convince ourselves, well, it's not too bad. We all do it, right? It's just a trivial thing. Sure, it'd be great if we didn't do that thing, but since we all do, it can't be that serious of an issue. Paul writes to Christians in Corinth, and in the 10th chapter, he's warning them to stay away from the sins of the Israelites when they were wandering in the wilderness. God had already heard the Israelites groaning and delivered them from slavery. Now they're in the wilderness, and Paul warns these Corinthian Christians about 3 destructive, sinful patterns to avoid from that history lesson. 3 things: idolatry, sexual immorality, and the last one, verse 10, and do not grumble, as some of them did, and were killed by the destroying angel. It's why Paul and other New Testament writers took this very seriously. 1 Peter 4:9 says, offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. James 5:9 says, don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. And then there's this passage. This is brutal. This is in Jude, the small book of Jude, describing the impact of grumbling in the midst of a community of faith, in the midst of the church. It says, these people are blemishes at your love feast, eating with you without the slightest qualm, shepherds who feed only themselves. They are clouds without rain, blown along by the wind, autumn trees without fruit and uprooted, twice dead. They are wild waves of the sea, foaming up their shame, wandering stars for whom blackest darkness has been reserved forever. These people are grumblers and fault finders. They follow their own evil desires. They boast about themselves and flatter others for their own advantage. I don't make this stuff up, folks. Grumbling, complaining, this is serious business that is destructive. It's destructive individually and it's destructive corporately. But it also robs us of the joy that we seek, the joy God created us to experience. So as we're pursuing godly joy and gratitude in this study in Philippians, I think we would do well to take our verse today with sober conviction. Do everything without grumbling or arguing. Because if we want to be the church that God desires us to be, if we want to be people marked by gratitude and joy, we need to be liberated from our bent towards grumbling. So why is it that grumbling, that complaining is such serious business? Like, what was it about the Israelites grumbling that made this such a critical problem? Let's trace it back. The people cry out to God, the groaning of their hardship and oppression, remember? God displays his power. He delivers them from that, the slavery. You get the plagues. You get the miracles through Moses' leadership. You get the parting of the Red Sea, looking back and seeing Pharaoh's army swallowed by the receding waters behind them. Some of the most breathtaking and miraculous stories recorded in all of Scripture. The Israelites are now free out in open land because of God's power. They rejoice, they give thanks, they sing praises to God. And we look at that and we think, my goodness, look at what God did. These Israelites are going to be set for life when it comes to gratitude and trusting God and joy. Except it was just literally a few days later, they came across some water that didn't taste great. It says, the people grumbled against Moses, saying, what are we supposed to drink? And get this, God is gracious. These people have endured so much, maybe. He supplies good water for them. Now they have freedom and good water. Okay, now they're going to be set forever. Now they're going to be joyful and full of gratitude forever, okay? Well, here's what we read a few verses after that. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died in Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, when we ate bread until we were full. For you have brought us into this wilderness to kill the entire assembly with hunger. And yet God is gracious again. He sends manna, bread. We're told it tasted like thin crackers with honey. Bet you didn't know golden grams were such a godly food, right? So now they have this tasty bread product. Now they'll be all set. Now they'll be full of joy. This goes on like a tape loop, okay? Next, they're complaining about water again, to the point where quarrels and disputes break out. Again, close connection between complaining and arguing. To the point where Moses says to God in verse 4, what am I to do with these people? They're almost ready to stone me. And then sometime later in the account we read this. Some troublemakers among them wanted better food, and soon all the Israelites began complaining. By the way, just pause. Remember how we opened things this morning, the thought exercise? How we can be affected when we're in an environment of whining and complaining? You have a group of troublemakers who start complaining, and pretty soon all the Israelites are doing it. Complaining is toxic and contagious. When you complain, you infect everyone around you with anti-gratitude, anti-joy. All right, continuing. They said, we want meat. How we remember the fish that we used to eat in Egypt for free, and the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now we can't stand it anymore because there's nothing in front of us except this manna. So not only is complaining toxic and contagious, complaining also distorts our perspective. They didn't have fish for free. They were slaves. But now, in light of whining about meat, that's all they see. To the point that they're looking back on generations of forced slavery as the good old days. We had it good back then. See, grumbling causes me to miss, to blow past and minimize the mountains of faithfulness and provision and blessings that God has given me, while amplifying whatever I don't like in that moment. It's actually me. This is a picture of me complaining about other drivers while on the road to a gathering of great friends, transporting a bunch of delicious food in a comfortable Dodge truck, accompanied by a loving family whom I'm now infecting with my toxic whining. That's the distortion and deception of grumbling. After all that, here's what happens. This is Numbers chapter 11. The Lord became exceedingly angry. Those are difficult words to read, by the way. But it gives us a glimpse into how much our complaining and ungratefulness is a stench to the God who sustains us and provides for us. So the Lord became exceedingly angry. The Lord heard you when you wailed, if only we had meat to eat. We were better off in Egypt. Now the Lord will give you meat, and you will eat it. You will not eat it for just 1 day, or 2 days, or 5, 10, or 20 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and you loathe it, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you, and have wailed before him, saying, why did we ever leave Egypt? Needless to say, we need to be a people who can be freed of grumbling. We need to be liberated from it because it spits in the face of God's provision and faithfulness and blessing. So we need to get back to this idea of changing our internals. Now, I want to be clear here when we talk about this. When we talk about changing our internals, we are not talking about being people who are still just as filled with me-centered dissatisfaction and negativity and gratitude, but just have gotten really good about pushing it down and suppressing it. That's not the end game here, not at all. You think that's what Paul is doing when he's writing from prison about joy and gratitude? That he just riffs off this letter to the Philippians, clenching his teeth the whole time, and then he puts down his pen and becomes a miserable jerk? Do you think that's what's really happening? God's desire for us is transformation. That's the work on the internals we're after. That's the work that God does on us and in us as we cooperate with him. Just like we talked about last week. Giving him permission to mold and shape us increasingly in his image, his ways, his likeness. But the truth is, along the way, there are these disciplines, there are these practices we can embrace that help keep our clay soft. Help keep us fertile soil for the ways God desires to grow us and work in us in our journey of joy and gratitude. That's been true throughout this whole series, and we'll continue to see that. Things that we can begin to practice, disciplines that we can embrace to be a part of the work God will do in us. So I want to leave you today with one practice, one discipline that can help loosen the chains of complaining in our lives. And I'm actually going to use Paul to communicate this. He used a phrase in Romans 12 where he said, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I actually want to tag another passage into it. This is from Proverbs. It says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. We read that and we think, right, guard my emotions, blah, 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 next. We actually just talked about this at the men's retreat. Our speaker talked about this. This verse is actually a lot more than that. Here's a few other English translations of the same verse to give you an idea. So, same verse, Proverbs 4:23. More than anything you guard, protect your mind, for life flows from it. Carefully guard your thoughts, because they are the source of true life. Said another way, be careful what you think, because your thoughts run your life. So what gives? Why do some say heart and others say mind and thoughts? See, in biblical language, when we see the word translated heart, it's often differently from how we use it. The ancient writers associated the heart, that's the word they're using, they associated that with a word that meant the absolute center of our will. Our kind of central decision factory, if you will. And that can include emotions, but it definitely includes our thoughts, what we do with our minds. And it's why Paul talks about the renewing of our minds. I don't know if you've noticed something over these weeks, but many of the things we've learned through years of study and research from our social sciences and psychology, all these things that studies and research have found to be true in the human condition are things Jesus taught about and lived out. Things that Paul discovered and practiced and is writing about here in his letter to the Philippians. The reason generations of studies and counseling research have found it to be true is because God is the author of all of it. And when we reflect his image and his character, we discover it and grow in it. It's just taken some of our sciences 2,000 years to come to the same conclusion that Paul did. And this discipline of our minds, our thought life, is a great example of this. I have a really good Christian friend. He's a licensed, professional, and nationally certified counselor. He has a master's in marriage and family counseling. He's a certified advanced alcohol and drug counselor. Again, he's also a committed follower of Jesus. And he has been a gold mine for me in talking through the fascinating connections between what he has come to learn professionally and what we see in God's Word. We were talking about today's topic on the phone this week, and I want you to hear something he shared with me. His quote's going to be on screen. He said, "We tend to believe that whatever mood we're in controls our thoughts, which then affects our actions. This lets us blame unsavory behavior on a passing mood. But that's not how it works. It's actually our thoughts that control our mood, not the other way around. Thoughts control mood, and then mood affects behavior." So wait, you're telling me if I direct my thoughts a certain way, it will affect how I feel, which can then affect how I respond? Well, that's what my Christian counselor friend said, but it's also what we already read in Proverbs 4. Be careful what you think, because your thoughts run your life. After hearing that, maybe then it's no coincidence that Paul, the one who has discovered that, writes later in this letter to the Philippians, he says, "Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." Think about such things because your thoughts run your life. Written from a person in prison awaiting a death sentence. Maybe Paul was on to something, you think? We're going to keep this conversation going about joy and contentment and gratitude in the coming weeks, but for now, we're going to close by remembering Jesus and his victory over sin and death. The same Jesus Christ who, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame. That's what we center our thoughts, our mind on when we take communion together. We remember that cross through symbols of bread and juice as Jesus' body and blood. Hopefully you got packets as you came in. If you didn't get one, there's extras in the pews. We can find forgiveness of sin, wholeness, transformation through God's power at work within us, all the way to completion. So if you call Jesus your Lord, we invite you to take communion with us. If you're unsure, just use this time for personal reflection. Let's pray, and then we're going to put our minds there. We're going to reflect on that together and take communion. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. Even though at times it is uncomfortable, it pricks us back pretty hard. God, I pray that we would be willing to take a deep breath and to embrace those habits, those disciplines that help keep us soft and moldable and teachable for the work you desire to do in us. And so God, now, as we've talked about letting our minds be renewed and how important our thought life is in directing our responses and our attitude, God, we put our thoughts on the cross. We center our minds there and on that amazing sacrifice made for our sin, for mine, for everyone here. God, we thank you, and we rest in that. We rest in the love that was displayed for us through your Son on that cross. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's take communion.
Into the darkness you shine. Out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you. None like you. Our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. Let's all stand. Into the darkness you shine. Out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you. None like you. Our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. Our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? Then what could stand against? Our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. Our God is greater. Our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? Then what could stand against?
Amen. Go ahead and take a quick seat. If you've been coming here for any length of time, you know we always like to extend the opportunity for any struggle you may be seeking clarity on or prayer about, or any conviction, any decision that you feel God's kind of impressing upon you to step forward in. Whatever that may be this morning, find me or an elder after service so we can encourage you and stand with you. You can even indicate that on your Connect card and drop that in the offering boxes on your way out. I'd love to get a chance to talk with anyone about any of those things. I'll be in the lobby after we dismiss here. Okay, important transition here as we dismiss. As most of you know, as Katie mentioned, today is the Safe Worship Seminar put on by IDES, that's International Disaster and Emergency Service. And we've been talking about this, right? We live in a world where threats to safety are more prevalent than they've ever been. Yet as a church, we desire deeply to be a place where imperfect people can come and discover the healing grace of Jesus. That's why we're here. So how do we balance safety and security with compassion and a welcoming outreach? Answering that question is what today's seminar is all about. And a bunch of you signed up, thank you. But I just want to say, even if you didn't RSVP, but you can still hang around for a bit. We have a couple extra spaces today. We have enough food. So if you can stay, but you didn't RSVP, please stay, okay? We want as many of you to hear this as possible because it's impacting decisions and conversations being had by leadership here at the church, and then that impacts all of us. So it's going to be downstairs. Here's the plan. In just a minute, I'm going to pray, and then we're going to watch kind of an intro video from IDES about this presentation we're going to hear today. And as soon as the video finishes, those of you able to stay, just head downstairs after the video. We're going to just get some food and start eating. If you can't stay, you're welcome to leave after the video starts, okay? And as we've said, due to the length of things today, there's no formal child care. Kids are welcome to eat, to stay with parents. Of course, parents are welcome to step in and out as needed. A couple of the tables at the part of the downstairs when you first enter have little tent cards on them saying families with young kids, so it's easy to get in and out, okay? The section back there by the restrooms and the kitchen is where we enter, and that's the back. The speaker is presenting from the other end of the room, okay? We've tried to configure the downstairs to make this as painless as possible. So that's the plan. Thanks for coming this morning. Let's pray to close our time together and for the food downstairs, and then we'll watch the video and head out, okay? Let's pray. God, thank you for everything we've been able to talk about today. Thank you for your words, instruction about joy and about how our minds can play such a crucial role, what we think about can play such a crucial role in shaping us. God, may we find discipline in embracing that, in embracing the ways you want to work on us, that we may not be complainers and grumblers, but we may begin to learn genuine gratitude and let that be what comes out of not only our mouths but our lives. God, thank you for that time this morning. Thank you for the presentation that we're about to be able to kind of digest together, and for those that are here with us. Thank you for the food that we are going to be able to enjoy. We pray that your presence would be among us and be a blessing to us as we gather downstairs. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for coming. See you either next week or downstairs.
There's a gunman inside the store. We need help now.
Do anything last weekend? It was very nice, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Right about is the new system enhancement. What's going to be the solution by the time we...
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Actually think he's got he's got a truck. I don't know if your daughter would be interested. Yeah, definitely. Now, she figured out what college she wants to go to.
911, what's your emergency? We need help. There's a gunman inside the store. He's shooting the place up. We need help now.
Issues that we found. Okay, Emily, see what that is. See what's going on. Just let us know what you find out.
There's a man with a gun. He's right there.
Where's the wall? Lights.
you go. You're safe for that.
There's a guy with a gun shooting. Look.
James, we don't have...
No, look.
Run! 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 To the right! To the right! To the loading dock! Come on, this way, this way, this way!
Oh, no, come here.
Yeah, in here, in here. The gunman's coming.
What are we gonna do?
We're gonna have to defend ourselves.
I can't do this.
You're gonna see your daughter tonight, okay? We are all going to go home tonight, all right? We have a right to defend ourselves. Get the gun! Get the gun! Hey! Hold him down, hold him down!
Gosh, I'm just so glad you're okay.
Yes, we're all gonna go home. Everybody's going home.
Yeah.
If you ever have the misfortune to be in an active shooter event, you deserve to survive. In our research, we have found that the actions that potential victims take during these events are critical to their survival. We have identified 3 options that have proven effective in many events. These are: avoid the attacker, deny the attacker access to your area, defend yourself. It is a personal decision, but you have a right to do so. Avoiding the attacker starts with being aware of your surroundings at all times and knowing what is going on around you. If you see or hear something that looks suspicious, take action. For example, the stalker took immediate and effective action to protect himself when he observed the shooter pulling out weapons from the bag. Others, however, hesitated, and this hesitation can cost them valuable time that they could have used to get away from the threat. If you hear something that is, or could be, gunfire, start trying to get away from it as soon as possible. Gunfire has a distinctive sound. Inside of buildings, the sound can be muffled or distorted. A single loud bang could be a person dropping something, or even thunder. But repeated loud bangs are much more likely to be gunfire. Additionally, look at the reaction of others. Are they startled or scared? Are they running? What are they saying? Any one of these events individually may create denial, but when put together should create a heightened awareness and stimulate an immediate response. It is important that you know how to get out. The situation will be chaotic and rapidly changing. In general, you will want to go to the nearest exit. But you must also understand that the closest exit may not be accessible or safe to use. If this is the case, go to a different exit. While avoiding the threat, consider the uses of cover and concealment. Cover offers protection from gunfire, while concealment minimizes your exposure to the attacker. Try to keep objects between you and the attacker. If you can't avoid the attacker, sometimes the best option will be to deny the attacker access to your location. In many locations, this can be accomplished by closing and locking a door, such as they did in the meeting room. Locking the door has proven effective in many attacks. If the door does not have a lock, you can place heavy objects in front of it. Remember, barricades work best if the door opens toward you. If it doesn't, use things that are readily available, such as straps, belts, or objects that can be used to block or secure the door to make it difficult for the attacker to enter the room. This may at least slow the attacker down and give you time to identify alternate means of escape, such as adjoining rooms or windows. When attempting to deny access to your location, you want to make it appear that there is no one in your area. Lock doors, turn off the lights, silence your phones, and get out of sight. Your attempt to deny the attacker access to your location might fail.
The gunman's coming.
What are we gonna do?
We're gonna have to defend ourselves.
Have a backup plan about what you will do. In many cases, this may be to defend yourself. You need to be in a place where you can act if the attacker comes into your location. In most rooms, you will line up against the same wall that the door is on, near the door so you can react, but not directly in front of it. If you are unable to avoid or deny, your best option may be to defend yourself by using whatever is available. In a situation where someone is attempting to kill you, you have the legal right to defend yourself. Attack weak spots such as eyes, throat, and groin. Fight to the best of your ability and do not quit until the attacker is stopped.
Get the gun!
This is what the workers in the warehouse did when they were unable to avoid the attacker and felt their lives were in immediate danger. Whatever option you choose, call 911 as soon as you are in a safe location. Provide any information that you know. The operator will ask you a lot of questions. If you don't know the answer, don't guess. Just say you don't know and only state the facts.
I'm not sure. There's 3 of us in the room. We're on the...
There's a guy with a gun. He's shooting.
This will be a complex situation, and we can't tell you what you should do in every case. What we can do is provide you with information about the options that we have found to be most effective for surviving these attacks. The ultimate choice is yours. What you do matters. Avoid the attacker. Deny access to your location. Defend yourself. Law enforcement will be entering a chaotic scene with limited information. Their first priority will be to stop the threat to your safety. The police may not know where or who the threat is. Listen and comply with their commands immediately.
Put it down, sir. Put it down. Both of you on the ground.
Police are trained to look at people's hands to assess threats. Do not have anything in your hands that could be perceived as a weapon, such as a cell phone.
Show me your hands, sir. Show me your hands. Move to us. Everybody, keep your hands up, please. Walk out the door.
If told to do so, stay where you are and do not make sudden movements. Again, follow all commands. Remember, what you do matters. Avoid the attacker. Deny access to your location. Defend yourself. Remember, ADD. You can survive.